Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Clemence Kuchera. I'm the Assistant Dean for the Graduate Law Programs at McGeorge School of Law. I'm delighted to be here and delighted to have our three guest speakers today. Professor O'Neal, one of our current students, Jeffery Benson, and one of our alumni, Alex Torres. Thank you very much for being with us today. So today, before we have the discussion with the panelists, I'm just going to give you a quick overview of the program. We'll have the discussion. We'll talk a little bit about the next steps as to what it means to apply and what are the deadlines for applying for the program. But we'll have tons of time for question and answers. So the Master of Science in Law program at McGeorge was created close to 13 years ago. Since 2019, we have slightly changed how we deliver the program. We have now three fully online concentration of our Master of Science in Law, including the Government Law and Policy, which is the program that we're talking about today. We also have two hybrid concentration, one in human resources and one in health law, and a custom and no concentration for those of you who perhaps don't necessarily want to focus in a particular area of law. The Master of Science in Law degree is now a degree that is more well-known. Like the majority of the law school, of the ABA accredited law schools, do offer a Master of Science in Law degree. Sometimes they're called Master of Legal Studies, or sometimes they're called Master of Jurisprudence. But at the end of the day, they're all the same. They are degrees that teach law to people who do not need to be an attorney for their career growth. This particular concentration in government law and policy is particularly designed for recent graduates and professionals who really want to have that in-depth knowledge, legal knowledge, and who wants to work in and around the Capitol, but who do not need a JD degree. Our JD program is a fantastic program, and we have a wonderful concentration, a capital lowering concentration that Professor O'Neal will talk about a little bit. But most students, don't want necessarily to practice law. So the MSL program in government law and policy is a good alternative. The program is designed so that students can complete it in 2 years, taking 2 courses each semester. And all of our courses in this particular concentration are taught in an online asynchronous manner. That means that you'll have the flexibility to listen to the pre-recording and to do your work at a time that is convenient for you. But yet we still have weekly deadlines. So to create that engagement and that classroom-like atmosphere online. Our students, and you will hear more from our current student, Jeffrey, tend to very much like that flexibility and appreciate the opportunity to still network and connect with students in a perhaps more informal way at times. Let me see. This is just a very big overview of the curriculum for the Government Law and Policy program. We have 7 required courses, and we have a fairly large number of electives. You only need 3 electives for the program. The master's program here is 26 units. And what is unique about our MSL program is you're able to also take classes in the other concentration, or you're able to take a public policy class from our public policy department. We at McGeorge, we offer a Master of Public Policy and a Master of Public Administration. So we offer some more unique classes, not to the public policy world, but to the law school world. We offer a budget class. We offer stats class on how to use data to make decisions. Our students tend to usually do most of their required courses in their first year and then move on to the electives. Although we give the option to all of our students, especially for those who are local, to be able to come to campus and to take an on-campus class. I think most students do take only our online classes. And some of the public policy classes, I should mention, are also online, or they're taught only on Saturdays. We have a new class that we are going to start teaching. I'm very excited about it. It's a local government and housing law. Um, and this is going to be part of the government law and policy MSL program. So, with that said, I am going to now turn this over to Professor O'Neal, who is a faculty director for the MSL in Government Law and Policy. She's also the faculty director of the Capital Center at McGeorge School of Law. And the Capital Center includes many programs. And I think I'm going to turn this over to you now.
That sounds good. Thank you so much, Dean Kuchera. It is wonderful to see you all here. Thank you for joining us. To give you a sense of my background and kind of our capital programs here at McGeorge writ large in terms of all of the different programs that we have, I worked in the legislature before I went to law school. I was a Senate fellow, and then I was a legislative consultant in the office of Senator Bill Lockyer, who was chair of the Judiciary Committee when I joined the legislature, and then he became president pro tem of the Senate. And when I was in the legislative building, I fell in love with the policy world. I love learning about new things. I love feeling like I can be a part of the conversation. In California, where we have so many complex and diverse policy issues facing the state, we often lead the state in terms of the policy discussion or lead the country in terms of the policy discussion. And I think if you are interested in these kinds of issues, you could not be in a better place to be located in a program that is here in Sacramento. California is the fourth largest economy in the world. Full-time legislature, all sorts of things that really enrich the experience that we're able to offer our students. As Dean Kuchera mentioned, I direct our Capital Center for Law and Policy, which is located here in the law school, and it encompasses a number of programs, one of which is our JD, our law school concentration in capital lawyering, which is for students who are interested in what we think of as perhaps non-traditional lawyering careers. We have some students who go into practice, but many students who work in the legislature, who work as lobbyists, who work in social justice organizations, doing different kinds of legal work that require the law degree, but don't necessarily require them to go to court or do the sort of traditional things we think of as lawyers doing. We also have our MSL in Government Law and Policy, which is why we're all here today, as Dean Kuchera mentioned, a program designed for folks who want that legal training and to understand how the law works, understand statutory construction, understand various components of the political and legislative sphere, but don't need to do the full 3 years of law school, aren't interested in taking the bar exam. So I think this program is uniquely positioned to set you up for careers in this space post-graduation if that's something you're interested in. We also have, as Dean Kuchera mentioned, an MPP MPA program, so a Master's of Public Policy and Public Administration program, and we have a concentration within that program that is focused on government law and policy. I teach in all three programs, so I teach in the JD program. I teach a course called Capital Lawyering and Policy Making. I was a litigator for many years after law school, so I also teach a lot of persuasive advocacy courses that come in handy in both the legislative and the litigation realm. I like to tell students that to me is kind of the connection between these two worlds. I teach a leadership course in the MSL program, and then I also have affiliated, as I mentioned, with the public policy programs. The Capital Center puts on events throughout the year for our students. Many of our MSL students are online, but we have a number of people who live local. Jeff has been able to attend some of our events on campus. We put on an annual event at the beginning of the year, which is a private tour of the Capitol and then a reception with faculty and alumni from all of our programs. One of the things that I really emphasize to our students is to not only get to know our alumni, but to get to know each other across programs, because all of us will be going out and working in the space, and it is a wonderful thing to know people who are doing different kinds of legislative government policy work and have those connections. I was having coffee actually yesterday with an alumni of our MSL program who is a member of the Capital Center Alumni Board, and he was talking about how valuable the training that he received in the MSL program has been in terms of shaping his career in the Senate. So I could go on and on and on about this, but I want to make sure that our panelists have time to tell you a little bit about their experience and then also allow time for questions and answers. So we have Alex Torres, who is a graduate of our MSL program. He is a lobbyist and just recently opened his own lobbying firm so maybe he can tell us a little bit about that. And then Jeffery Benson, who is a current MSL in government law and policy student. So I'm going to turn it over to you all, and hopefully, Dean Kuchera, we can reserve some time at the end for questions and answers.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Professor O'Neal. Good to see you, and thank you to Dean Kuchera for the invitation. Alex Torres, I have been a lobbyist for Just shy of 10 years here in Sacramento, born and raised in Sacramento. Followed my parents to work at the Capitol, but actually went to undergrad to run away from that, but came back, was unsuccessful as an actor in Los Angeles. So we said, we'll try our hand at politics. And really liked, I interned in the building, really liked the policy. And so when I moved back to Sacramento, I was fortunate to get a very entry level role at a lobbying firm here in Sacramento, and figured, what do I not have? What skill sets do I not have, and how can I advance my career? And so ultimately, I was already doing sort of an MPP, MPA type role. I was doing the policy analysis. I was doing, a lot of work in the process, understanding the legislative process. But what I was lacking was legal knowledge. I always found it fascinating how Leg Counsel would draft amendments to a bill. The principles of statutory construction, all that sort of stuff really intrigued me. And so when I came across the McGeorge MSL program, it was a great fit for what I was seeking. It wasn't the full law degree, but it was enough law to be dangerous. As I tell folks, it's really been really critical, I think, to deepening my policy knowledge, but also my understanding of process, how a court may look at a newly passed bill, and the like. And so was very fortunate, as Professor O'Neal noted, to start my own practice about a month ago. Previously worked for a large law and lobbying firm here in Sacramento, and again, that's where the MSL degree came in handy. Sometimes you have to translate politics to the attorneys, just like they can translate legalese back to politicos. And so, great to be with you all, and look forward to diving into the discussion.
Great. Thank you for the introduction, Professor O'Neal, Dean Kuchera, and nice to meet you, Alex, and welcome, audience. My name is Jeff Benson, and I thank you for having me, first and foremost, but I'm a current student in the MSL program, Master of Science in Law, candidate at McGeorge School of Law, with a concentration in government law and policy. I come to this program after more than almost 4 decades. I just dated myself there, working in both public and private sector, and primarily in enterprise consulting and professional services, and sales has been my moniker. And then more recently, over the last 5 years, with procurement at state and local government, cities and counties and federal agencies, K through 12, public sector. I'm also a lifelong civil rights advocate, and my family's legacy includes historic Brown versus Board of Education, that case, that landmark case, which continues to shape my commitment towards justice and equity and belonging, and just the systemic changes that we are all experiencing today. So my journey really encompasses bridging law and policy, and purpose, if you will, personal purpose. And it's really deepened not only my professional tool set, but my personal belonging and my calling to be of service through informed governance. I've been knocking on the door of Professor O'Neal. I had the luxury of having her in class in my leadership and organizational development class, which is amazing. So just a number of throughputs and through lines to get me to where I wanted to be. My current experience, I won't go into much detail because I know there's a Q&A as well, but it's been really affirming for me in terms of the rigor and the experience, and its design, as Dean Kuchera and Professor O'Neal and Alex have stated, is really designed to work with professionals, both if you're coming out of an undergrad program or working professionals for 4 decades almost, like myself, who come with years of experience in real world experiential learning, but you need the legal and the policy framework to take on certain subject matter or impact at the next level. And that's what McGeorge and the MSL program has done for me. It's intellectually rich, but very, very practical in that sense. And so what I appreciate the most is that the professors, the staff treat our professional insights as assets and not afterthoughts, I would say. But we're here not just to learn the law, but we're here to also use the law. So thank you, and I'm happy to be here.
So before you ask your next question, Professor O'Neal, let me just tell the audience that you can ask your question in the Q&A chat or in the webinar chat. I will be monitoring both, and I will read out loud the questions.
So I was hoping that maybe each, Alex and Jeff, you could tell us a little bit about why you decided, and Alex, you talked about this a little bit, but why you decided on McGeorge in particular, what you feel like it adds beyond your skill set prior to this, and just a little bit about your decision-making process, because I know a lot of the folks here are trying to decide if this is the right program for them.
Sure. And if you don't mind, Jeffrey, happy to jump into that one first. I think particularly in Third House, where there are a lot of really, really talented lobbyists, but also attorneys, when you see the JD or Esquire or whatever the title on the back end of someone's business card, it gets you thinking, right? What do they know that I don't have? What skill sets can I develop to grow to that, VP partner, principal level to get to elevate my career? And I think I was fortunate to work under two partners at the lobbying firm I started at, who are also very talented attorneys. And so I saw some of those components. I didn't quite understand how when you're codifying case law or precedent, what are the ramifications of that? How will a court look to certain construction issues? All of these components were really just out of my depth at the time. And so I think as I was evaluating the different programs, so I was looking at, USC, I was looking at Sac State, McGeorge having that grounding as a law school was really the differentiator for me. You can learn legislative process, you can learn policy data and analytics. You can learn all of that more. Not too presumptuous to say that one could through work experience teach themselves that. With the legal component, really having like top tier law professors guiding those courses, and then bringing it back to because in many cases these are also attorneys who may have lobbied before, or maybe they filed an action against a bill that was signed by the governor, arguing it was unconstitutional, right? Like all of that experience from the McGeorge faculty, I think really appealed to me, because there was really no other program that had that nexus of law and policy that I was seeking. And I think, as someone who's been doing this for 10 years now, and as a new business owner myself, also understanding what the lawyers are working on, what actions are they filing, whether they've seen a lot of cases in what areas, that informs policy, that it provides policy insights. It also was able to kind of I think generate where do I want to skate to next, what issue might be the next big issue that's being heavily litigated, but the legislature may want to step in. So it was, I think, good to kind of open up my brain and kind of have that understanding of what are the top trends in the legal industry that may inform my business development as I have my own business, or maybe it's an issue I want to get out ahead of, so that way I can understand what issues the legislature, and predict a little bit what the legislature may be taking a look at in the next session or so.
Thank you, Alex. Jeff, did you want to share your process?
Was on mute there. Yes, so my process, while very different, I think has some of the same tenets that Alex spoke of. My pathway to impact wasn't linear. It was intentional. And so when I started to research McGeorge, I've done a couple of boomerangs from various other locations in California, by way of the Midwest. And I actually used to deliver freight to McGeorge as a courier back in the 80s. And it's really astounding to me that, and I've told this story to Professor O'Neal and staff, and it's more than just a full circle moment for me, but my purpose, based on my experience and my education prior, was that I wanted to be intentional about the second chapter in my life, if you will. So the MSL program really gave me the legal framework to name the challenges. I was working in public sector, supporting cities and counties, and working often with contractors and with government affairs folks and legal professionals in the contracting procurement space. And so it just made sense for me to continue to try and fill those gaps, not only from an educational standpoint or academic standpoint, but from a system standpoint. And so I saw that the program would help me build contextual the nature of my approach, and also give me the vernacular, if you will, to have those conversations with folks that had been my superiors in years past. So when I combined the education, the experience with my endurance to stay engaged in those spaces, it really brought me to the apex of the McGeorge MSL program. Admittedly, I thought that I would probably go right from my undergrad graduation right into a JD program, but I took the route of graduate studies, and my dad, who was a professor at Cal State in Fullerton, had a lot to do with that and the decision making. He said, you know what, take the next step and get your master's and figure out if legal and policy and advocacy is actually the routing for you. And lo and behold, it was. It's given me the academic prowess. It's given me the challenge. It's given me the alignment to create conditions, I'd say, for lasting change, both in policy and advocacy work. So I'm really excited. I was just telling Dean Kuchera when we hopped on the call initially that I'm just finishing my first year. So it's like a 1L, but for the MSL program with a concentration in government law and policy. And I'm gonna frame that up legislatively, maybe doing work in the Senate or the Judicial Council, in order to extend and advance civil rights at some point or another. So it's been a lot of multiple pathways, and then the pathways sort of crossing back and forth over one another over time. But that's what has brought me to the point that I'm at today.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jeff, for sharing that. And Alex, I want to touch back into a couple of things that you said, because I find, like, with my first year law students, or I also teach some courses on the undergraduate pre-law courses, that when we bring practitioners in, they throw out terminology that maybe everybody doesn't understand in terms of how it highlights the expertise that you were able to develop in the program and why it's relevant in the space that you work in. So you mentioned legislative counsel, and you mentioned this idea of certifying case law or precedent. Can you tell us what you mean there and how that comes into your role as a lobbyist?
Sure, absolutely. So, legislative counsel are essentially the legislature's attorneys. So when they're drafting language, there's a process to have a member of the legislature, their office, request language drafting amendments and the like through the process, whether it be you're amending an existing bill or wanting to get fresh language drafted to be able to put a bill across the desk, introduce a bill in the beginning of session or through the process. That there are many steps to that, and depending on how that is drafted, a court can construe the bill very differently. So whether it's a bunch of specific phrases utilized in a very specific order, or it's a general phrase that is a term of art then defined later in the bill, all of these things really matter. And so I didn't, when we read a bill, you can look at it just on its face, plain language, and say, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I think I can understand where that's going for. But in the instance of as an advocate, if I'm representing somebody and my client is not clear whether or not this bill may or may not apply to them, that's where that drafting is really the devil's in the details, as we're very fond of saying in the legislature. And so I had a good sense for it before, and I think going into the McGeorge program, I got a lot better at it, because that was actually one of the things I really focused on the most, was wanting to understand all of those little instances in where a client may have an issue with a bill, right? And do we need to do cleanup? Do we need to seek amendments to be even more specific in a definition? That was, I think, a really important process for me to lock in on as an advocate. It helps me do my job better on behalf of my clients. And it also just further ingrained me in that process. By contrast, there are extremely talented lobbyists that are not attorneys nor MSL grads that have a very in-depth understanding of it. But I'm of a firm belief that I got a lot farther, a lot quicker, because I had a better understanding of it. It made you just a little bit more effective. You're able to look at things with a little bit more of a fine-tooth comb through that process. And then when working with the drafting attorneys, I'd be able to, and so again, as a refresher, the Legislative Council drafts the language on behalf of the request from a member of the legislature. When I'm working with the drafting attorney, I can say, hey, I really like this subsection, or, there's these two specific outliers. Maybe we want to define this term of art rather than trying to be too specific and list out each thing we mean this to apply to. Um, all of those things really made me, I think, more efficient, more effective on behalf of my clients when working with the drafting attorneys as a non-attorney myself. And so it's a lot of process to it and a lot of pieces to it. But I think, just being that much more dangerous is the difference between retaining a client and winning for that client longer term, or just being able to kind of, I guess, figure your way out through the process as a non-attorney.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that was one of the major factors in my decision to study the law after working in the legislature. I felt like I looked around and lots of times people would turn to the folks with the legal training and ask them for their opinions on things or ask them to make decisions on things. And so I think it can be a real asset. I want to touch into some of the things that Jeff mentioned as well. So you talked about intentionality and purpose, and I know these are some of the themes that you and I have discussed and your civil rights work. What do you hope to do with the MSL degree? You said you're about halfway through the program. So where are you directing yourself once you finish the program?
That's a great question, Professor O'Neal. Thank you so much for it. Long term, my purpose, again, is deeply rooted in civil rights and also government accountability. You don't know how many times I've read the Brown case back and forth and other cases that are associated with that from a social justice, civil rights standpoint over the decades. But government accountability for me and community impact, I think, are the main thrust of why I'm where I'm at today and how you've helped me get there. And I'm really thankful for that. So whether, I feel like right now, whether I'm contributing to policy reform or working in a public agency, or launching an equity-focused initiative, this program is really grounding me in those principles. And so that allows me to look at how governments and institutions are powered and the strategies to influence it, right? So the MSL program, it isn't just a credential for me. And I've talked to you, Professor O'Neal, about the next chapter and the next evolution of where I'm at, and it likely will include me obtaining my JD degree. But I don't want to miss steps along the way in terms of my impact and the larger arc of becoming, kind of a social justice, civil rights, equity player, but really honoring the legacy while also building something new. And so I'm going to take all of that. And I'll tell you, just to be really transparent, I was considering the fellows program, and I never thought that I would be, a candidate. I just submitted my resume and my application for
Excellent.
the executive fellowship program, foundationally born of the work at California State Universities, as well as McGeorge. And so I'm sitting back waiting to see if I get, the chance to work as a fellow in the executive program at the state. And so those are some of the things I'm doing. But not only am I reaching that academic goal, it's also opened up other areas of opportunity for me that I had no idea. I knew it existed, but I didn't know that it would apply to me and my journey. So, that's what I would say, how it aligns with my future goals and kind of where I'm sitting right now.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And keep me posted on the executive fellowship process. The programs are wonderful, the capital fellowships. And
Yes.
many of our alumni pursue the fellowships as well. So, Dean Kuchera, I want to make sure we have time for questions that folks may have for our panelists. So, do we want to open the
Yeah,
floor?
well,
Or
we
yes.
have one question, but I think I mean, like anyone can answer them, but I suspect I'll be the one answering it. Will you be able to take courses such as mental health and policy and health law as electives in the government law policy curriculum? So I think I'm going to go ahead and answer yes. For the electives, you have a lot of flexibility because government law and policy is very broad. We know that sometimes students also have a secondary area of focus. So you are able to take courses in our other MSL concentrations, or also courses are offered in the MPP MPA or in the JD program.
Dean Kuchar, I would also
Yeah.
just say, just at least from my experience in the program, um, the survey courses were particularly interesting to me. I remember I took a course on health law, and at the time, there were some discussions around workers' compensation. There were discussions around insurance denials, and at the time, the legislature was really doing a lot of work in that space. So it was like I found those courses broad enough around a couple different areas. So I think in some cases we dealt with some case law around mental health that was looking at some statutes of what's covered, what's not covered, and so I think that well, not a specific course on that issue. It was broad enough to be instructive that you can plug and play it on on a lot of different issues.
Thank you. Thank you so much for adding that.
Mhm.
Another question is there an MSW degree, and how does a social justice arm differ from that? So we do offer a Master of Social Worker. I think that's what the MSW stands for. It is offered through our School of Health Sciences, so it's not offered through McGeorge School of Law. As far as the social justice question, I mean, like I'm sure Professor O'Neal, anyone would be able to answer that part. That social justice gets discussed, and it's a much broader issue than just the law, right? There is a social access to medicine, to mental health, and then there is the legal part of it. So I don't know, Professor O'Neal, if you want to add.
Certainly. I mean, we have students, I think, that cross all of the programs that we're talking about, the capital and government law related programs that are interested in working in the social justice space. And in the traditional lawyering sense, litigating on behalf of plaintiffs, of clients who are trying to make change in the court system and the way that the law is interpreted by judges and the courts, folks who are doing policy advocacy from, representing organizations that are affiliated with issues that are meaningful to them, folks who are doing analysis in terms of figuring out where things should go or directions in which policy should move, people who are, say, the executive director of an organization, kind of crafting the vision for that organization as it moves forward. So there are many different ways, and I think, Jeff's experience speaks to that you can look at the social justice lens and see where you could make an impact in terms of the type of work and the type of experience that's most meaningful for you.
Thank you. So for our two panelists, Jeffrey and Alex, what undergrad degrees do you have?
So I have my master's in communication studies from Loyola Marymount, and then before I came to McGeorge, I actually was doing a mostly online, somewhat hybrid certification in public policy and public management through the Texas A&M Bush School of Policy. And I realized I really wanted to be on campus and network as much as possible. And so that's another reason I came to McGeorge, just the phenomenal networking. A lot of different legislative staffers were JD students at the time, or there were a few that were in MSL. So great networking, but it started on the communication side of things.
And for me, really quick, I did my undergrad at California State University of Sacramento here locally, and it worked out really well through the College of Education, the Career and Technical Education Studies program. And it really resonated with me at the time I was considering that, because I had done my associate's degree at American River College here locally in Sacramento as well. So they have distinct pathways. It took some research, but I remember having some vo-tech experience back in Kansas before college was even on my radar, but through the high school that I graduated at. So there's been some through line and definite touch points along my journey, but got my undergrad degree at California State University of Sacramento. And it's interesting, there were a number of students and deans and faculty that prompted me to take a look at McGeorge, because they knew I was considering law, and because of my experience, evolutionary ways, I was able to connect those dots and get me to the point where I'm at today. So the CSUS was instrumental, and a lot of the staff have partnerships and relationships, and so that networking really played a part for me to get to where I was today.
And if I
Thank you.
just build on that just a little bit, I get asked a lot by people, is there the right major for these kinds of programs? And I would say the answer is unequivocally no. I think our experience is much richer when we have people with different backgrounds and different perspectives. There are all sorts of different policy issues that one can be interested in that are informed by, things that they studied in undergrad or work experience that they have had. So I think sometimes people think, well, if you're not a political science major, then anything related to law is not for you. And that just isn't the case. We are welcome and hope for students with a wide variety of undergraduate majors.
Thank you. Absolutely. When we review applications, like we don't often look at the degree. I mean, like we look at the degree, we look at the GPA, but the subject like is not as important. So there's a question about when you review transcripts, to what extent do you consider the undergrad GPA? um, Specifically for someone who's graded for more than 10 years ago. So for people who have graded for more than 5 years, the undergrad GPA does not matter as much. We do a holistic review of the application. So what does that mean? That means like we do look at your transcript, we do look at your GPA, but we also look at your work experience. We look at your volunteer experience. We look at what happened in your life. So we very much read very carefully your personal statement as to why you want to do an MSL program. What are your career goals? Why do you think this would be a good fit? If you're not particularly pleased with your undergrad GPA, you may want to write a one-page addendum explaining why you're not pleased and what you think has changed. We obviously want to enroll students who are going to be successful in the program and who are going to be strong alumni, but we do understand that not everyone had an opportunity to go to college and just go to college and had the family support and everything else. Life is not linear, so we absolutely take this into consideration. Um, Professor O'Neal, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I would agree with that 100%. I talk with a lot of people who are interested in law school or our programs here who are concerned about those kinds of issues. And I always say it is a holistic evaluation, right? And particularly if you've been out of school for quite some time and have work experience and other experience, those are things that are going to be looked at. And certainly the content of your personal statement matters.
Yes, thank you. So another question is, I hear the historic family legacy fueling the panelist direction to McGeorge, but as someone who's a first-gen student, like, is there someone at McGeorge that they can talk to?
Absolutely. Yes, we have lots of first-gen students. I had no one in my family that worked in politics or went to law school or any of those kinds of things. So, I'm one of those people myself. We have a first-gen organization on campus. We have quite a few students who are, this is their first experience in their family going to law school. We have a number of affinity organizations, different student orgs on campus that can provide community and support. We have a Center for Inclusion and Diversity, which is located in our student center for students to have kind of quiet study space, to have resources to different alumni and folks who are there to mentor and provide guidance. So it is not, I tell people all the time, sometimes there can be a perception that to be in the policy space, you have to be connected. And I think McGeorge provides you the structure and the scaffolding to become connected. So bring your interest, your passion, your curiosity, and then, engage with the campus, engage with events, engage with our alumni. We have an alumni network like no other. I mean, here in Sacramento, I tell students this story. I coach moot court in the law school. It's a form of appellate advocacy. And I was at UC Davis for a competition, and I was chatting with another faculty member about our capital lawyering program and our MSL program, all of our capital programs. And he said, we've been trying to break into that space for a long time, but every time we go over there, every single person we talked to went to McGeorge. You all kind of own that space. And I said, we do. We have a remarkably strong alumni network. So people in the policy space are excited about working with our students, excited about bringing them along and sharing their experience. I think our two panelists here are evidence of that. They're taking time out of their day to be here and share their experience. So I would not let that stop you in any way. I think it is absolutely something that you create and it becomes what you make of it during your experience.
Thank you. So I put it our last slide with the graduate law at pacific.edu. Please do send us an email. We'll get back to you. We'll find a time for us to meet. Like I meet with a lot of prospective students, Professor O'Neal also. I'm sure that our two panelists would be willing also to meet, and to chat with you more about it. And I'm also happy to put you in touch various different offices on our campus. We also have a wonderful career service department that works also with a lot of students. So anyway, so our MSL students do get the same support that our JD students get than our MPP and MPA. And I think this is what is fantastic about the program is the diversity, and it's diversity in everything, in experience, in age, in background. Like it makes like the program very, very a lot more enriching. Um, and so I don't. Oh, there's one. I was going to say I don't see any more questions, but there is one more question. So, is there a civil rights department? So I'm assuming the question is there a civil rights department at McGeorge? Professor
So
O'Neal.
So I just some clarification on what we're talking about here. Do we have courses focused on civil rights? Certainly. Within the law school, unlike an undergraduate campus where there are various departments like the English department or the history department or the physics department, we don't so much have that sort of structure in law school or in graduate programs. So the electives that we offer within the program are, located within that program and they are available for students to take. As Dean Kuchera mentioned, many of our MSL students take cross-programmatic courses, and so that's available, but we always have some coursework that is focused in the civil rights space. It can vary from year to year depending on which faculty is teaching which course at a given time. But there's not a specific department because we're not organized in that way, but there is coursework in that space for sure.
Yes. And for example, like the local government and housing law is a class that I would say it's definitely a civil rights, course. For the majority, we have a water and environmental justice course. Those are online, our MSL courses. And then we have a very large number of JD courses. And as Professor O'Neal mentioned, like in each of our courses, because we teach law, this is what you're going to learn. Like there is always going to be a component of civil rights aspect. And there is an opportunity for students who have a very unique and precise interest in a particular topic to write a paper. So we call that a directed research. To do a master thesis, it takes a lot of motivation and commitment. So often our MSL students are not interested in that. This is more for people who wants to go into academia. So they're looking for a publication, like a paper that is of publishable quality. That's what we say. But we have a fair number of our MSL students who work one-on-one with our professor and write or do a research paper on a particular topic.
I will say on that note, I'm actually working with a JD student right now who is working on a rulemaking petition for Veterans Affairs for the federal agency regarding veterans mental health services. And it's not so much because she wants to go into academia, it's because she is a veteran herself. And these are issues that have touched her life. And she feels like the way that the system is being administered just doesn't make sense. And she, again, wants to be a part of the conversation. So she is writing this directed research, what's going to be a rulemaking petition to submit to that executive agency at the federal level. So I think there are multiple ways that folks can get really deep into a policy interest if that's something that they are wanting to pursue during their time here.
Thank you. Any other questions? I'm going to give 2 minutes for our audience to be able to type more questions. I'm going to go back on the slide here. For those of you who are interested in applying, we're currently accepting application for spring. We have a soft application deadline of December 8th. I say soft because often applications are not fully complete by December 8th. But if you've at least started your application by December 8th, you would be in a good shape to start the program. In January 2026, we're also accepting application for fall of 2026 classes for fall 2026 starts mid-August. I work with a team of wonderful professionals who meet one-on-one with prospective students and can answer all of your questions, whether it's about the program, or the substance of the program, or career outcomes, or if you want to be in touch with an alumna or an alumnus. But they can also answer questions about simply like how to upload documents on the application portal. So please do not hesitate to reach out to us. We also encourage our students who are local to come to campus and to visit us. McGeorge is really a beautiful campus. And even though you will likely take most of your classes online, you have access to our campus. You have access to our gym, you have access to our library, you have access to our on-campus health clinic, you have access to the dental clinic because now we have a dental clinic through our School of Dentistry. So please come and visit us. It is always best to send us a quick email to let us know you'll be stopping by. So I don't see any other questions. Thank you so much, Professor O'Neal. Thank you, Jeffrey. Thank you, Alex. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I look forward to continue working with all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.